Okay, so I'll need to do this in a shorter version. So Jesus did say that it'll be worse for you than those of Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, we all know Sodom and Gomorrah as homosexuals. They were trying to gang rape two men. Okay? And so, Jesus is God. I and the Father are one. Those weren't two different gods in the in the Bible. So, if you believe in the words of Moses, Jesus said, "If you believe in the words of Moses, then you believe in me." And the words of Moses testify about me. So those are the same ones. He also said, Abraham, before Abraham was, I was. Abraham was the one God, Jesus, taught to Abraham about Sodom and Gomorrah. And Abraham, Christian, someone of faith, Jewish faith, believe in the same God that we believe in, okay, literally pleaded for those men. If there be 50, would you save them? God said yes. Okay, that was negotiation right then. Now let me tell you about Pharaoh. Pharaoh, God in this. So let me say this before I say that. So Sodom and Gomorrah and the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah was the standard of bad. That is like, the homosexual, when man dejects the established thing that God put there, man and woman, from the beginning of time, since man was, okay? So you can say what you want about marriage rules, but there was no questions about what God intended from the beginning of time. He didn't take two hands full of dirt and slap them together and say, y'all two become one flesh. He took man, separated the woman, and then said, y'all two can put them back together. Wherever this stuff comes from. Okay. So praise God. So become one flesh. So literally, he said, it'll be worse for you than it was for Sodom. Those and preachers who are marrying, it says, the ones, I ain't gonna go there, I said that. The preachers, the blood is on your hands. Okay? For the preachers to do it. You're supposed to tell the truth and say what God tells you to say. That's the only way. Even Pontius Pilate had the sense enough to say, let the people decide, and then the blood be on their hands, So anyway, Sodom and Gomorrah was the standard of how bad you can be and how God would judge it. In the case of Pharaoh, God said, well, let me try locusts. See how that works. And a hardened heart, a prideful, hardened heart. Okay. Well, at which he already had a hard heart. And so God just gave him what he asked for. He wanted a hardened heart. He wanted to believe. I said, okay, here you go. And just like God said, I'll give you over to your own flesh. Go ahead. Go. Goodbye. Just like the woman that got cast. That's what we have when women get cast. Women get, screw around, and then eventually they get cast to the dogs. That's what happened in Gibeah. When the man went after his wife, she was an adulterous woman. Eventually, she got cast to the dogs. That's what happened to the adulterous woman who those Pharisees tried to stone her. She kept fooling around, and then eventually the wolves got a hold of her. That's what happens to a lot of young girls when they keep fooling around with a lot of these different men, and eventually they get cast to the dogs. Or you come across a real dog. Like I saw this case where this woman, she might have been promiscuous, but then they took some drugs, and a group of guys took some drugs and raped her. And they got off until they raped somebody else. I just saw that on the news. Anyway, so this was supposed to be the short version. So Jesus didn't talk about it because that was known as the standard of judgment. I mean, this was, even in Pharaoh, it was just, okay, well, let me send some swines. Oh no, that's nowadays. Sorry. He said, let me send some locusts. Let me send some frogs. Let me change the color. You know, they were given chances. You know, there was only a negotiation before, and then God still went down to consider, and then the judgment was just city gone. You know, this was not really something that they could reprimand or change or anything. It was just like, goodbye. You know, I mean, Pharaoh had even more chances than that. You know. So Jesus didn't have to talk about it, you know, else he would be bragging and boastful and prideful, which he is not. He's a humble God. Humble yourselves, you know, and then God don't have to do it for you. At least the men of Gibeah, what they did was they took the woman and raped her. She got cast to the dogs. They took the woman and raped her and abused her all night. The thing that is said about Sodom and Gomorrah, those men said, Lot, either you give us those men or we will do you worse than them. They wouldn't talk, what did they mean by worst? You know? You know, they wouldn't even accept that. They wouldn't even accept a woman. Those men, you know, then God, you know, in Gibeah, God didn't have to fight them. He sent other people to bring them down for Israel. Israel were the priests. They were supposed to execute what God said. You know, anyway. You know, God brings low nations. You know, so anyway. And he'll use anybody he needs to use to do it. You'll use your enemies. You know, so anyway. Speaking of which, when they gonna put Bush and Cheney in jail, why is he in the news? his term over, you know. They need to, you know, put an RFID on him. We need to track him all the time. Sorry. I'm sorry. I take that back. God bless you all. Love you all.